No one is more well known than the Emperor Constantine. Everybody knows that it was him who changed the worship of Saturday to Sunday. Everyone says they know. Everyone knows that it was him who made the Roman Empire Christian, or at least they think they know. So I think there couldn't be a more interesting study than to look at some of the sources, earlier sources, on the Emperor Constantine and the period in Christian history of the 4th century when, for example, people believe that the Roman Church, they call it the Roman Church, established its control over the church, and then the Roman Church, they believe, created the New Testament, etc., etc. So let us now look in this period in history, looking at some of the sources. I plan to read a little bit from Emperor Galerius's deathbed edict of toleration in 311, just before Constantine took over. And then we will look at the edict of Milan, which according to this came in 313, but I've read that it came in 312 also. And I tend to look a little bit at the history from the perspective of the church historians from that period. Now, everybody already knows the negative history, that it was Constantine who took the church away from Judaism and from its Jewish roots and continued the apostasy. So now all I'm going to do is give you sources which are historical, but from those days. So they may have a different perspective to what we know today. Now, I don't actually know what they're going to say because some of them I haven't read before. So I'm just going to bring you sources so that you yourselves can judge. Who was this man Constantine? Is he really the one who in Daniel 7 helped the Christians with a little help, but it wasn't a true help? Okay. So this book, World History and Cultures in Christian Perspective, on page 120, From Persecution to Toleration. Diocletian and Maximian both retired in 305, resulting in a protracted struggle for control of the empire. That's the Roman Empire. While the persecution of the Christians continued unabated, finally, from his deathbed, Emperor Galerius in 311 proclaimed toleration for the Christians of the East, and Constantine extended legal protection and recognitions to the Christians throughout the empire with the Edict of Milan in 313. Nearly 3 centuries of savage persecution were over, and the Christian church had triumphed through it all. So what we're going to see now is the Galerius toleration and the Edict of Milan. Okay. This is from documents of the Christian Church. 311, the Edict of Toleration issued by Galerius from his deathbed after years of strenuous persecution and bearing the names also of his colleagues Constantine and Licinius. The other colleague, Maximin Daza, ruler of Egypt and Syria, refused to sign. So Maximin Daza refused to sign this edict of toleration. And he was over there in Egypt and Syria, the king of the south and the king of the north. Okay. Among our other regulations, to promote the lasting good of the community, we have hitherto endeavored to restore a universal conformity to the ancient institutions and public order of the Romans. And in particular, it has been our aim to bring back to a right disposition the Christians who had abandoned the religion of their fathers. 3. After the publication of our edict ordering the Christians to conform to the ancient institutions, many of them were brought to order through fear, while many were exposed to danger. 4. And nevertheless, since many still persist in their opinions, that is, they refuse to go back to worshipping the ancient gods, the pagan gods, and since we have observed that they now neither show due reverence to the gods nor worship their own God, We therefore, with our wonted clemency, in extending pardon to all, are pleased to grant indulgence to these men, allowing Christians the right to exist again. Just think about that, people. The Christians did not have the right to exist in the time of Galerius. They were going to be wiped out if Galerius had anything to do with it. But now, in 311 after Christ, or 311 after the beginning of this era, he is allowing it. And to set up their places of worship, provided always that they do not offend against public order. 5. We will in a further instruction explain to the magistrates how they should conduct themselves in this matter. In return for this indulgence of ours, it will be the duty of Christians to pray to God for our recovery, for the public weal and for their own, that the state may be preserved from danger on every side, and that they themselves may dwell safely in their homes. So at that period, coming up to 311, it was completely forbidden for Christians to exist. But in this Edict of Toleration, which comes from the book of Lactantius, De Mort Pers 34, we find that the Christians are permitted to exist. Now, let me just give you an example of what it was like in that period when Christians were not allowed to exist, okay? So we have here persecution under Diocletian from 303 to 305. Diocletian seems to have been favorable at first. His wife and daughter were catechumens, which means they were training to be Christians or planning. And Eusebius tells of the great increase of the church in the early part of his reign. The change in his attitude was due, according to Lactantius, the same guy we are just reading just now, to the influence of Galerius. Here goes. It was enacted by their majesties Diocletian and Maximian that the meetings of Christians should be abolished. 724, March 303. Imperial edicts were published everywhere ordering that the churches be razed to the ground, that the scriptures be destroyed by fire, that those holding office be deposed, and they of the household be deprived of freedom, if they persisted in the profession of Christianity. This was the first edict against us, but not long after other decrees were issued, which enjoin that the rulers of the churches in every place be imprisoned, and thereafter every means be used to compel them to sacrifice. Eusebius in De Matribus, Palestine 3:2. April 304. Imperial edicts were issued in which by general decree it was ordered that all the people, without exception, should sacrifice in the several cities and offer libations to the idols. Maximin 308, 311, 308 Eusebius. Therefore, a host of letters from Maximin was issued everywhere throughout every province. The governors and also the military commander, by edicts, letters, and public ordinances, pressed the magistrates, generals, and notaries to implement the imperial decree which ordered that the idols' ruins be rebuilt with all speed, that all without exception, men, women, slaves, and children, even infants in arms, should sacrifice and offer oblations. 311. Maximin ordered temples to be erected in every city, and the sacred groves to be speedily removed, which had fallen into ruin through lapse of time. He set idol priests in every place and city, and over them he appointed in each province a high priest, one of the officials who had specially distinguished himself in all kinds of service, giving him a body of troops and a personal guard. So we see this is a time when idolatry was reigning, and the Christians were being forced not to worship according to their freedom of worship. This will be a similar thing which will happen if Islam takes over. We will not be free to evangelize. We will not be free to obey the Lord Jesus when he says, go and teach all nations. So we have to remember, if we don't wake up now and start praying, during this coming time, there's going to come a persecution of this order on the church. We need to wake up, my people. So now what happened? In 3:1, we have already read the Lactantinus Galerius allowing the Christians to exist again. So the Christians went through some hard times. Then we come to the Edict of Milan in 313. This is now, we're talking about what, 280 years after the birth of the church, around 33 AD. 280 years like the 280 weeks of the birth of a child in the womb. The child is in the womb for, I think it's 280, not 280 weeks, no, 280 days. Please forgive me. 280 days is the gestation period of a child in the womb. And we have 280 years, and we get the Edict of Milan, 280 years after the ascension of Jesus. When we, Constantine and Lysianus, emperors, met at Milan in conference concerning the welfare and security of the realm. So notice their intention here. They're interested in the Roman Empire, the realm. We decided that of the things that are of profit to all mankind, the worship of God ought rightly to be our first and chiefest care, and that it was right that Christians and all others should have freedom to follow the kind of religion they favored, so that the God who dwells in heaven might be propitious to us and to all under our rule. Now, the God who dwells in heaven, that reminds you a little bit of the Kurish decree, when he said the God of heaven, and also in that time in Nebuchadnezzar, the God of heaven. Amen. 4. We therefore announce that, notwithstanding any provisions concerning the Christians in our former instructions, all who choose that religion are to be permitted to continue therein without any let or hindrance, and are not to be in any way troubled or molested. Note that at the same time all others are to be allowed the free and unrestricted practice of their religions. Oh my goodness. This reminds me now of Barak Obama and the people over there in America who are actually trying to spread other religions and everything together. This is like secularism in its first phases. Huh. For except obviously Barack Obama is also spreading a religion and other religions which will actually in the end cause the restriction of evangelism. In fact, that's what they're doing. They're stopping evangelism. They're trying to stop the Christians doing what the Christians have to do, which is to preach the gospel to all creatures. For it accords with the good order of the realm and the peacefulness of our times that each should have freedom to worship God after his own choice. And we do not intend to detract from the honor due to any religion or its followers. Moreover, concerning the Christians, we before gave orders with respect to the places set apart for their worship. It is now our pleasure that all who have bought such places should restore them to the Christians without any demand for payment. 8-9. Churches received by gift and any other places formerly belonging to Christians to be restored. Owners may apply for compensation. So there was a compensation program going on there. 10. Constantine continues. You are to use your utmost diligence in carrying out these orders on behalf of the Christians, that our command may be promptly obeyed from the fulfillment of our gracious purpose in establishing public tranquility. So shall that divine favor which we have already enjoyed in affairs of the greatest moment continue to grant us success and thus secure the happiness of the realm. So we see, it was Galerius who allowed the church to exist, and it was Constantine who allowed the church to get back on its feet again. But no one can say from these texts yet that Constantine made the Roman Empire Christian. No, he was a secularist